first question is, how is what is going on in China and around the world right now impacting your plans to expand in the very country that was the epicenter of this outbreak?
Well, certainly the headlines reflect that our world is increasingly connected. And there's no question that since Asia comprises nearly 40% of the entire meat industry, our mission at Impossible Foods remains the same, which is to offer every meat eater, whether they be in Asia, in China, or here in the United States, more and more of our great Impossible Burger and Impossible Pork made entirely out of plants. We're really excited today to announce that we're passing on some of our cost savings by reducing our cost to wholesalers by an average of 15%, a move entirely consistent with our global mission to be available everywhere.
China is the world's largest consumer of pork, so that makes sense. But let's talk about food safety. I mean, this is a question on everybody's minds right now. What are you doing to ensure the safety of your shipments? And should the public be concerned about broader food issues?
Well, Impossible Foods was founded by a PhD, MD pediatrician, Pat Brown. From the very beginning, nearly 8 years ago, our fundamental culture, our DNA, if you will, is rooted in ensuring that we have the highest quality, most healthy options that meat eaters, hardcore meat eaters, can crave. And for us, that means being radically transparent about how we make our products, ensuring that we pick the right plant-based ingredients to ensure that the public is certainly safe, but beyond that, has a better option, frankly, than the incumbent industry for their health and for the environment.
David, do you anticipate any sorts of marketing difficulties in China for plant-based meat?
I think that the verdict is out that meat eaters, not just here in the United States, but as we've seen with our own business in Singapore and Hong Kong and Macau, meat eaters globally crave meat that doesn't make them feel as guilty. And the Impossible Burger is exactly that, a craveable burger, whether it's an Impossible slider for less than $2 at White Castle or in the hands of a Michelin-starred chef. And it can transform in the hands of a Chinese chef as it has today here in the United States. I don't anticipate that changing regardless of the headlines of the day.
The headlines of the day, of course, mostly circulate around coronavirus at the moment. Has that had any impact on your supply chains?
We have had no material impact, and frankly, it's allowed us to focus on distributing more and more of our product. We've seen such unprecedented demand that even as we're fully in stock today, you can get a quarter pounder made by Impossible at any mom and pop restaurant that wants to serve it through our distributors today. We know that our demand will increase. And so we have been undeterred and frankly not distracted by the news of the day in serving our mission.
Disney resorts have been closed in China, in Shanghai and Hong Kong. What about your partnerships with Disney World and the cruise line? Any impact there?
Well, we were really privileged to see that Disney chose Impossible Foods. It was years in the making, actually. They have an extremely high bar on quality, and to be the choice they made for the plant-based products that they're happy to serve is something that I think is going to pay off for the long term. We haven't seen any impact today, but our focus really is on a long-term mission in business that really goes beyond what we see day by day.
Speaking of Beyond Meat shares have been on a tear since its IPO, so we have to ask every time, any update on your plans to go public?
We are not announcing today an IPO for Impossible Foods. As I've said before, though, it is our mandate. It's a remit for me by the board to ensure that Impossible has every strategic option. We have a great mission in business to fund, so we operate as if we're public, even though today we are not announcing an IPO.
So what is your outlook on, let's say there's, news of the day changing, so quickly here, but what is your outlook on the growth of the plant-based food market over, let's say, 5 years? How does that market look different then than it does today?
Well, 95% of the consumers of Impossible Foods products are hardcore meat eaters. So we like to think about our business not as defined by those who may be attracted to plants, but frankly, those who are attracted to craveable meat. And when I think about that industry, which is a staple, you know, meat eaters like me, we define breakfast, lunch, and dinner by the meat we want to eat. It's such a fundamental part of everyday life that regardless of what's occurring this week or next, we know that that core staple market will be ready for continuous change and innovation. That's the reason why we exist, to serve the meat eater and make a difference on their health and their environment in the same time.
David, you talk a lot about global expansion. When can we expect to see some of your products in Australia?
Well, we haven't announced a date for Australia. I can tell you, while we don't provide dates, we've been hard at work for several months, if not several years, for all the major markets, including Australia. But for now, the news of the day is about our global reduction, if you will, in the US in price, this 15% reduction that allows more and more consumers here to enjoy the Impossible Burger.